All right. Sometimes I forget to do that, so I like to do it sooner rather than later. Well, thank you everyone for spending a Thursday evening here with us on our webinar. My name is Tim O'Reilly. I'm with Backyard ADUs. I've worn many hats, and right now I'm basically leading the charge on our pre-construction team. With us tonight is Jerry Elovitz. Amongst many things, you're an ADU owner.
Mm.
So you've gone through the full process. And tonight I have a bunch of photos as memory lane, pulling those up, and then as well as a 3D walkthrough.
Mm.
And I think our goal tonight, Jerry, is to just hear about, your experience in your ADU and all the nuts and bolts of that. And then all the folks out there in the audience to answer your questions and get your feedback. So with that, Jerry, I was thinking we'd kick it off. I'll pull up the photos. We could sort of look at maybe what it looked like at the beginning, and then maybe you could sort of kick us off about how did ADUs come on your radar, and how did you end up pursuing, an ADU?
Sounds good.
All right. So a lot of finished photos, but I went through here and I was like, what did it look like? Well, this is your backyard in 2022.
Yep.
This is probably the view from where you're sitting now. What
right.
made you think about an ADU? Like, how did you get started in that process, and what got the wheels turning?
Well, our lot is an acre on Cape Cod, and it's kind of unique in that it sits in a corner. So there are two streets, and as I envisioned the idea of building something in the backyard, it was suitable to have its own driveway. And just looking at it, the ADU always made sense, concept of it. The problem was the town of Barnstable, the regulations were just onerous. And ADUs had always been allowed as places to put family members, but they had to be connected to the house. I had to show the tax returns from anyone renting the unit to prove that they were low income in order to get permission to build the ADU. And all that changed, I think, back in 2021. I realized, Barnstable's the biggest town on Cape Cod. It's comprised of 7 villages like Hyannis, Centerville, Mashpee, Cotuit, Osterville. It's a big place, and they had done permits in 2021 for 12 ADUs. And that was not serving the population need on Cape Cod, which was just getting worse. So when they changed the rules and I could build a separate structure away from the main house, and I didn't have to demonstrate low income, the town was suddenly interested in finding places for teachers, firemen, medical professionals to live. It wasn't all about low income. That's when it popped up on my radar as a serious option for investment.
Great. So it really was like your realization that the rules have changed, and
Mhm.
that your lot, knowing that it's big enough, could go from there. And you brought up right at the end there a rental, and I'm glad we're highlighting this early, because you did build this with the lens of you wanted to build something not for you or for family or friends, but as a rental.
That's exactly right. At my age, you have to think about retirement at some point. I'm still working part-time anyway, but the stock market was volatile, and if it drops, I can't really afford a 10-year correction. I was making like 1% interest on bank accounts. And as I've said a million times, real estate is real. Once you invest in it and you start renting it, or you can sell it, of course, um, that's a solid investment. It's not going to drop. However, it means I had to be very firm in my budget. I had to know what I was getting into, because if it went out of control, I'd lose the advantage. I'd lose money, and that would be harmful in retirement, not beneficial. So yeah, it was all about the finances, and it was designed from the get-go to rent. I won't say I didn't have the idea that someday I could put caretakers in there, prevent me from going into the home a little longer.
Yeah, have some
But no,
flexibility is good.
but from the get-go, it's been, for my wife, Also, I should point out that my wife and I live in the main house alone. We have three bedrooms, and one of the bedrooms is her studio, another bedroom is my office. So it just made sense. We had zoning for three bedrooms, so we built a one-bedroom ADU with a septic system of its own that was fitted for two bedrooms, so we could expand the ADU if we ever dropped out another bedroom from the house. You can go back and forth, fluctuating.
Mhm.
I know that
Yeah,
makes
that
sense.
was something we looked at as part of the feasibility study. And this
Yeah,
is the image from the street of that back area where it was like, all right,
yep,
we got our work cut out for us. There's trees and brush clearing. And you mentioned earlier we had put our own driveway into the ADU. So
right,
a lot of different pieces.
yep.
Uh, Great. And I think I remember too, Jerry, it's been years now, but you knew from your background and your profession that to be able to rent this on Cape Cod, what there would be ample people to rent it, right?
Yeah, it's not just Cape Cod, it's Massachusetts in general. Uh,
Mhm.
One thing that drew me to backyard ADUs is I noticed that you had spent a lot of time in the Amherst, Northampton area, which is also an area where it's very hard to find housing. And oh boy, that's
Like
yeah,
there's a
there it is.
comparison, that's like there's still the sidewalk in the foreground.
That's, but we had a lot of room for to do something back there, and that was just wasted space.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. So I think when we got started with that feasibility study, we came and did this assessment to say,
mhm,
can we get stuff in there? The answer was yes, but obviously some destruction was going to take place. Where's the water? We found that in your basement. Where's the power? In this case, it
yep,
was coming from the street. And then, like you mentioned earlier, like assessing the septic and how many bedrooms and what was possible.
mhm.
Um,
Turned out to be doable.
yeah, and from then zoning too, it turned out to be doable.
And
So
the town was
everyone's
interested. They hadn't had a lot of experience with this, so they followed it very closely, as you know.
yeah, yeah. And we did too of learning about those rules to say, hey, what actually can we do here? Um, Everyone's favorite topic, the elephant in the room, is always cost. And you had mentioned earlier, like before you even got started, you sort of needed to figure out what are your costs going to be in order to move forward. So how did you approach that cost? Like what were you doing in the background to say this is what's going to make or break this?
Well, I've been on the Cape for 40 years, so I contacted builders, people I had known, friends, that sort of thing. And frankly, nobody was really interested in building a tiny house. Um, the interest, the motivation, getting phone calls back seemed all dependent on square footage. Plus, it was very difficult to get a firm estimate from anybody. You know, there are 18 different trades involved in building a house. I've done it myself before, and I really didn't want to manage that again. Doing the subcontracting is monumental on top of dealing with the zoning. And that's when I started looking into prefabs. And looking into prefabs, simple internet search showed up. You know, prefab in my backyard, Googling yielded backyard ADUs. And looking at the videos got me interested. It just seemed to be designed for what I wanted to do, get me out of the middle of it.
Great. There is a question coming from the audience about
Yep.
the septic.
Yep.
They're wondering, is the ADU connected to the main house or does it have
No,
a separate system?
it has its own system. The main house we really didn't want to disturb. It's in the front yard. It would have been distant. We have again a full acre here. So it's in the front yard of the main house, which is probably about 70 feet away, 60 feet away from the ADU. So it just made, and we had plenty of room, so we just installed a two-bedroom a septic system sized for two bedrooms. Um, and it was, I think it was $400 or $500 more than a single bedroom one. And I didn't mind having the oversized just in case. You can see just to the left of that picture, right there is where we dropped the septic in. Um, and it cost about the same as it would have to rip out and expand the other one, which I just didn't want to mess with.
And then that's a really good insight. Actually, when we did this in, we were just saying 2023,
Mm,
the ground has always sort of been moving here, and actually the DEP, especially here in Massachusetts, has just provided in April their guidance on Title V rules as it pertains to ADUs.
mhm.
Uh, so I'd have to re-review that with the lens of your project, Jerry, but we may have been able to do the same thing, or we may have had to actually like upgrade your system or connect the two. So
Hmm.
it was great to, from a construction vantage point, to have that, to put in that new system. It's contained to where the ADU is, and we didn't have to get into running it really far away and connect it to another one.
Another thing on my mind was, I don't know if it'll ever happen in my lifetime, but someday I wouldn't be surprised if Barnstable changes the subdivision rules to let me separate this off and sell it as a separate little house. And that would not happen if we were sharing a septic. It's got everything except its own water, and that would be easy to retrofit if it ever came to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a really great point. There's some towns in Massachusetts where they've very progressive on their ADU rules,
Mhm.
and they say you can own them separately, even if you can't subdivide. But at least here again in Massachusetts, we're just in the first cycle here, the Affordable Homes Act. We're
Mm.
just now, everybody is allowed to do this by right. Whereas, like you pointed out, Jerry, Barnstable is a little bit ahead of the curve there in 2021.
Mm.
Um, I want to get into the design parameters, but I guess while we're here, let's look at the outside.
Mhm.
Because I am remembering now, you had recently gotten your house uh,
Mhm.
re-sided or some siding accents. And one of our design pieces of not only, hey, where's this going to go, but how's it going to look, was how are these structures going to play off of each other? Do you remember what the sort of choices went into, picking the outside, either the colors or the accents?
Yeah, it's actually, we were able to use the same vinyl siding as the vinyl shingles that I put on the main house. And we flipped it around so the colors, um, well, one thing about this is, I should mention is, one thing I really am happy we did is we increased the pitch of the roof. That's not the standard pitch, as I recall,
Mm-hmm.
on the basic.
We're in
What
the
do you call this?
912
Is
here.
this an L line? Or I
Yeah,
forget.
we started with the boomerang. We
Ah,
started with
boom.
a
Yep.
small one bedroom. And then I was sort of keeping it in my back pocket. We'll look at the bonus room that you added
Yep.
and talk about that. So yeah, we went from a 712 to a 912, a little bit of a steeper pitch there, which on that smaller structure, design wise.
It's hugely important. Dare I say it, but the thing would have looked like a prefab trailer without it. And it made all the difference in appearance. Because again, we're kind of in a nice area of Katuitt here, and I had to let it fit in. I really didn't want grief from the neighbors about it.
And that luckily, at that time in Barnstable was by right. So we didn't have to go in front of a zoning board where your neighbors could get up and get mad.
They did
Um,
change that. I didn't, I have six abutters when you look at the map, even though you can't see them around the house. And all six would have had to be invited to a town meeting. And I'm sure out of six, one would have said, not in my backyard, just to be obstreperous.
mhm.
Um, but despite that, even though I didn't have to gain their approval, I didn't want something that looked out of place. This matches the environment, the neighborhood nicely.
Yeah. And I think grabbing those accents to the main house also
Exactly.
helped to say, hey, this thing is going to fit in my backyard, in my neighborhood, to what's already existing.
Hmm.
You ready to go inside? Do you want to talk about
Oh, I'm ready.
yeah.
I haven't been inside
So
in a while.
so I know your goal was, hey, like what matters is the budget at the end of the day. I'm doing this as
Right.
a rental. It has to work on paper.
Yep.
Why were you thinking a one bedroom? So again, we started with the boomerang, this sort of shape we're seeing now. What was your logic? And then we'll go inside and see.
Well, I have the option. Remember, we have we put in a two-bedroom septic for a few $100 more, and what we did inside when we got to it um, is the area for the stacking washer and dryer is about 2 inches wider than typical, and the stacking washer dryer could be removed, and that could be a doorway to a second bedroom if we added one to it. Um, I don't know why I wanted to do that, except that it just had the potential for expansion. It was easy to do.
Mhm.
Then we would just move the stacking washer dryer into the second bedroom somewhere. So we have that capacity. There it is. You can kind of see it in the back.
Yeah, let's go take a look. Um, so what,
Look at it from the top. I think that was a good idea.
yeah, let me zoom out
Or
here.
if you can get in there.
View in VR. I don't want that. So what we were looking at here is, let's step back. Is basically this area here could
Right.
be modified and changed. Instead of an angled wall, become a 90-degree angle, and that would be a hallway into a future.
That's right. You can see the space on either side of the washer dryer.
Mhm.
Um, just a little bit oversized. And
Yeah.
we would lose that window, but it could go directly into another bedroom if we wanted to. So we had that have that potential.
Mhm.
Uh,
Maybe we could start in the bedroom. So you knew you wanted to do a one bedroom, and as a rental, how did you think about what space to allocate here?
I
Um,
wanted it big enough for a queen, at least a full bed, if not a queen.
mhm.
And we have two side tables, two end tables there. It's tight, but it's comfortable and with a walk-in closet. And it seems to work. And notice the oversized windows.
Mhm.
In that higher window there, what do you call a story, something like that, uh,
Yep.
is because that looks directly at the other house, so it provides privacy. Yet plenty of light comes into that bedroom.
And I think I remember at the time we were talking about, I always think about it this way. It's obviously these things cost money, you're spending money, but
Yep,
when we get into the design phase, it's where do we want to spend our square feet? And we
yep.
had talked about, hey, we can bump this wall out, make this bedroom bigger.
Mhm.
Someone who's renting this could fit a king size bed if we did that. But do you want to spend the square feet there? Or, in your case, you chose, hey, I'd rather do this bonus room and spend my square feet somewhere else that um, what someone would like more. And so you mentioned this deep closet. I remember you
Mhm.
saying, I was like, hey, I want sort of a closet where you open up, everything's in front of you. They can store a lot of stuff. Um,
We
people
also
often,
did one of the very few changes in the design. Behind that little um, storage center is a cutoff valve for the water. Um, And so yeah, you can just see it there. Look at that. So
yeah.
we designed that. Otherwise, you'd have to pull up that floor port and access the crawl space, which I think is only 18 inches. It was kind of cool. The carpenters, the electricians, and the plumbers were using uh, automotive creepers. They were laying on their backs, zipping around on the concrete slab because 18 inches is not a very big crawl space. And I really
Yeah.
didn't want to and that thing has got a very thick floor insulation. So having the cutoff valve for the water in the event of a leak or leaving the house alone for a long time, cutting the heat down, was very important to me.
Yeah. And for just easy maintenance for you to,
Yep,
it's, hey, it's in your backyard and you're not living there.
right.
So the boomerang starts with this sort of open concept kitchen, living room, one bedroom, one bath. What was your sort of design parameters? I know it's a rental, it's in your backyard. Were the things you were thinking about as we approached design?
Well, light into the place. Notice it's got a full glass door in the kitchen area. And again, slightly oversized windows above the couch.
Mm-hmm.
And also right there at the uh, around on the other side of the kitchen there. Yep, it's just loaded with the place is just loaded with light. And we put in I forget what kind of blinds you call those. There's plantation blinds, I think. So they can
Mhm.
be dropped down and provide. But anyway,
Privacy.
just the house just seems expansive inside because of all those windows. And we had the ability to put them anywhere at any size.
And I think one of the things too, you said, hey, I want to provide flexibility to folks. So I don't know who's going to live there. And this is a small table. If they wanted
Yep,
a bigger table, it would fit. If two people were living here, let's say if it was a couple, two people can navigate and function in the
right.
kitchen. And basically not to pigeonhole ourselves in the design process that, hey, this is really isn't going to work for two people if a
Yep.
couple's living here versus one.
We were able to put in a bigger side-by-side refrigerator, which is not typical for a unit an apartment this size, by doing some things like shrinking the dishwasher. That's an 18-inch dishwasher designed for apartments, and really is fully adequate for, a home designed for two people or two people and a child possibly. Also, it's an induction range, Samsung induction range, so it's kind of a high-end kitchen. It's pretty neat.
And I remember that was important to you too. You went out and picked your own appliances and you went
Yep.
with Samsung because you did your homework and your research, because you knew
Yep.
that they were good.
I don't think the refrigerator is a Samsung because there was only two or three in that size available with an ice maker. Um, so that was kind of a science to get this thing to fit. But we did it as part of the design, and everything fits, as you can see.
Yeah.
To have an eat-in kitchen with both a counter and a table, and that table could expand. You can see there's
Hmm.
a leaf on the side, so four people could have dinner there.
Hmm.
Yeah, everything just works. It's very versatile, and lots of cabinet storage there.
This is one of those ones I remember we talked about, adding a closet pantry, and then we kept chewing on the plans, and I was like, well, there's a lot of storage here. There's
Mhm.
all of this under the peninsula storage, upper
Right.
cabinets on both sides, and then with that double bowl sink, plenty of space
Mhm.
under the cabinet in the corner with a lazy Susan. Um, it's
Yep.
certainly enough for one person or two people, which is great.
Hmm.
So there is a question in the chat about the square footage. And I think that's a great transition here, Jerry, to talk about. We had basically designed this whole boomerang, taken the boomerang model, it fit your budget where you needed to be. And from there, we started to say, well, what other changes or things you might want to make? And I think through that process, we started talking about a deck, a porch, and
That's
then
right.
we ultimately landed on this three season room. Do you want to talk a little bit about what your thoughts were here and why you went with a three season room?
Well, it was all about deck space, outdoor space, and this turned out to really make the apartment everybody sees, make the unit everybody who sees it likes this. This was originally a two-season porch, and these were openings. There were no windows installed when the ADU was delivered to the site. However, we had pre-designed those openings to fit standard windows so that I could add them in the future. And I don't think the ADU was on site for more than a couple of weeks before I realized I really wanted to follow through and make that a four-season room. That and those standard windows, I was able to go to Home Depot and just buy standard windows off the shelf. These big sliding windows are vinyl, and they're huge. And they would have cost a fortune if they were Andersons or Harveys. But I got them, I think, for like 300 or 400 bucks on sale, along with a Home Depot card. You get 5% off, blah, blah, blah. And I came back, and when one afternoon we nailed them in, we had, um, and so I saved a fortune on that, but managed to convert it to a four-season room. You guys helped me out and then built a floor. Originally that was a step-down floor, and we were going to just use the concrete slab as the floor. Then I realized the windows were kind of high though, because we had that 18-inch slab. So, but it
Mhm.
just worked out, and we had enough capacity in the HVAC unit to add that air conditioning head. So suddenly, for not a lot of money, we went from a 3-season, 2-season porch to a full 4-season room. That could be a bedroom, by the way, uh, if somebody wanted to use it as such. But I think
And
it just makes the whole place.
yeah, it brings the outside in. And so that original unit is around 580 square feet for that
Yep.
boomerang. And then we added this bonus room, 3-season, 4-season room on. So to answer the square footage question, we ended up being around like 760, something like that.
I
I'd have
think
to
it's not even that much. It just feels expansive with all the window space. Um,
exactly. I wanted to highlight here too. We also chose it at that stage when we're doing, okay, add windows in the floor,
yeah,
to do an accent wall here. I know it's just a
yeah.
very simple, shiplap in white, but to provide some definition in this space.
Well, it was going to be an exterior room.
Mhm.
Notice there's a Venetian blind built into that door.
Yeah.
Uh, because again, it was going to be just a porch. And however, I'm glad we put that Venetian blind. You guys were able to install that into a door at the factory because now it lends privacy. If we wanted to separate, somebody wanted to separate off that room, for example, it could be a perfect children's room. If
Mhm.
a small family moved in. Um,
It is also nice too, with this being an exterior door, where if you don't want to cool or heat this
that's right.
space, you're able to shut it. It's a really tight seal, energy efficient. So maybe in the dead of winter, you're not hanging out in the 3 or 4 season room. You don't have to
Exactly.
heat it
Mhm.
and to pay to heat it. Um, so great. Yeah. And so I think at the end of the day, the square footage went from, 1 bedroom to a one plus a bonus. Our budget, I think it probably added maybe 12 to 15 grand to the budget, but you still crunched your numbers and said, hey, I'm adding more square footage. It's still going to work as a rental. I feel comfortable, going forward.
Well, don't forget, it may have added 12 grand, but we eliminated the outside porch, which is going to be on the front of the house, which saved 4 or 5 thousand because I wanted a covered porch. I wanted that New England effect. But the house didn't really need it. Doing that little bit of color change on the front of the house gave it a little bit of definition and New Englandy feel. And I'm just glad we spent the money on this, I guess we'll call it a bonus 4-season room.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, from the user experience to it, it just gives a lot more flexibility. Um, I think at that point too, I'm trying to remember back in the design phase. If this door wasn't here, that
That's
living
right.
room is less of a passway through.
Mm-hmm.
Once we added that in, it was like, hey, you're gonna have to fit a smaller couch, and a smaller TV, and we need to leave space to walk through and through. But now with that bonus room, you could put your TV, you could put your large sectional, you could put your chair out there, and then
Mm-hmm.
have a very large dining area or a desk area, or give some flexibility here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all right. Well, I guess we're looking at the final product, but maybe
Yep.
you could talk a little bit about, you said, hey, you initially were searching for modular or
Mhm.
prefab in your backyard. What
Yep.
was it like building, you know, a modular house? Like you were there in the main house as this was going on. Like, how was that experience for you? And we have all the photos here to prove it too of the foundation forming and the truck showing up with the house.
Yeah.
Can you
It
talk
was
a little
kind of fun, It was nice to be a spectator and not be an anxious wreck, spending my life, coordinating things. Don't forget, this is Cape Cod, and getting people to show up. I suspect that's true just about everywhere, is par for the course. So again, not being the subcontractor was huge. Um, the guys and gals, there's a wonderful woman painter who worked with us, came from your outfit. They were all from Maine or Western Mass, and they were sort of like old craftsman oriented. Even the young folks um, were very particular about the details. And if they missed anything, either you or Chris or one of the other supervisory staff who were constantly in the place were finding them. So I could go over and just check on stuff. I didn't have to get on anyone's case. It was just nice. It was kind of fun to watch the construction go on. It was all on schedule. All the pieces happened on time. If I had a question, I just asked. I could email you or whomever, get an answer.
It's funny going all through these oftentimes where a lot of the photos are, things that, are on the punch list or things we want to fix. But I think that does speak to, us coming through and checking on everything. And
Well, to start with, you and I think Chris came down to the main house one day with all these cases of samples. And Gail and I just sort of sat there and picked out Formica wall colors. We went a little nuts on different colors in different rooms. I think Backyard ADUs has a standard. They have standards like two or I think three colors are standard. We exceeded a few of those, but they could adapt to anything we wanted. Um, um, so everything happened. You want to know my favorite thing?
oh, absolutely.
You haven't even asked. Is the damn thing came in under budget?
At the end of the
Came in
day,
on time and
matters.
under budget. Um, that was huge because remember, this was a rental unit all designed for income. And I really couldn't afford to not have it. And it wasn't hugely under budget, but my point is it wasn't over budget. And so my financial expectations came true. And when the thing was done, I put it on, I didn't even have any photographs, and I listed it on Craigslist without a real estate agent. And within
Mhm.
24 hours, I had three people who wanted to rent it. And
Great.
that was
Yeah. So
huge.
yeah. And I think I remember we were also, it was at the end scrambling to get it all done and all our inspections. And I think it was like the next week you posted it and you were ready to go.
People
And
wanted to rent it. They were chomping at the bit. Um, it's renting now for $2,600 a month, and I've had somebody in there steady, so I haven't had the opportunity to raise the rent. But that would be possible. But it's amazing that a one bedroom, under I think around 700 square foot apartment basically can rent for $2,600 a month. I include the utilities because I can. It's like 70, $80 a month for electric, and there is no other utility cost. And since I have solar on the house, it's which exceeds the solar, but the electric bills, it's a no cost thing. Yet that was found potential renters found that very attractive that there were no utilities. It was just a single cost per month.
there was a great question from the audience about solar, and they're wondering if we can do solar. And Backyard ADUs doesn't. We're not a solar company, but as the builder, we can think about and design. Um, is that something you're interested in? Great. Let's think about where we're putting this on the lot. What is our roof shape? What is our roof orientation? Again, we're not the solar company. We're not going to do this shade assessment and design the system, but we are, as part of our build process, going to get a projected energy usage report. And
Yep.
that's basically that is the recipe to say, this is how much energy you need to generate. And then I know in your case, Jerry, you said, hey, I got the big roof on the main house. We're going to do it here. And then obviously you're
I was
okay.
able to factor in the square footage and energy use from that report into, there's a limit on how big a solar system you can put on. It can't exceed the power use of the house. They don't want you making money by sending power back into the grid. So you can only get as much as your buildings on your lot allow in Massachusetts. So this allowed me to go for a bigger solar system. Plus, you may recall that figured into a little bit of our thinking with the increased pitch on the roof and the extension, which became the bonus room. That roof faces south, so it doubled the southern exposure at the higher pitch. That would allow me the future option of putting solar on it. That would only become germane if we separated off the house because I have enough capacity on the main house to power both units, which is pretty cool being zero footprint. And this thing is almost hermetically sealed. I think you'd smother in there without the air exchanger. It's actually got two settings, which you showed me when I went through the house, one for two people and one for more, because it has to put more air into the house. So
Exactly.
nobody
Our
dies
new
during.
houses are like this Ziploc bag, like
It's,
all sealed shut, and we need mechanical ventilation to breathe.
I,
Um,
I know it's kind of amazing. And there's a
totally,
whole
totally
house
different
filter on
way.
it too. That's, well, what do you call it? A HEPA filter on the darn thing in the ceiling.
Exactly. And there'll be some maintenance on that to, clean it out, but helping, filter all that outside air. I
Yeah, I
was
did.
brought up Jerry sort of the samples and picking selections, and I was just going to highlight a couple things
Yeah.
as there is a question from the audience on total cost. So I think we should talk about the two together.
Hmm.
You decide to say, hey, I'll spend a little bit extra more on the tile floor in the bathroom.
Yep.
And then the same for the shower to say, hey, I'll do a tiled shower and a shower glass shower door.
Right.
Uh, this is also reminding me too, where again, where do we spend square feet? You said, hey, the bathroom's really not a priority. It'll be a nice bathroom. I'll have nice features, but it doesn't need to be huge because again, be square feet. Let's put them in the kitchen. Let's put them in the bonus room. And I think another area too is you picked this really beautiful backsplash, which I will give you full credit, Jerry. You're a trailblazer because so many people have picked it since. Uh,
You
it doesn't render well in here, but let's see if we can go find it in the photos. But
wanted light color floors because that's got to be Cape Cod.
exactly that cottage feel, but
Yep.
it's this blue, really nice, like bluish gray tile. So you
Hmm.
definitely chose some upgraded features, but again, it was like, hey, you want this to be a high quality unit. Uh,
Hmm.
Going back to the site work, we know we needed to clear trees. We needed to
Hmm.
add a driveway. We had to add a new 2-bedroom septic, and that we had a really, really long underground electrical run.
Right.
So I always think of that as like our base, our foundation, things we have to do regardless of the size and the design.
All of that was included in the backyard ADU estimates, though, so it figured into the only thing that I paid for before you guys showed up was clearing the lot because I had a guy who wanted the trees for mulch on the
Mhm.
Cape. And I got a good deal on that. But everything else was included in the budget from the septic to that 100-foot long power line that was quite a job to put in.
Yeah, one was a doozy.
It was a doozy. And one nice thing I saved on, believe it or not, is I'm not paying. They this thing is too far to the cable had to be hooked up directly, and it's on the difference. It's on the other street, and they were digging a trench with a special high capacity cable. It was getting to be impossible to do. So what I'm doing now is I'm beaming Wi-Fi from the main house into the ADU, um, and it's called a mesh network. And I just bought it through Amazon, standard mesh network, and it works perfectly. There seems to be adequate Wi-Fi in the ADU, and that also powers the smart TV off that same system. It can stream movies and things. Although I don't know the current renter does a lot of time watching movies. But my point is, I saved a lot of hassle with installing cable to the thing.
Yeah.
And again, all the costs were known up front, everything.
Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, we came in, all in with this boomerang model. We were in the like 260 to 270 range. And then we obviously made it bigger and had some upgrades. So we ended up being probably closer to around 300,000.
And there was more if you were to include the
The
cost
lot.
of landscaping, the septic install and all that. But again, that was all per budget. And whether it was high or low, what's important is what I had planned on.
Yeah. There's an interesting question from the audience
Yep.
about financing by a mortgage lender. Um, you didn't finance this, is that correct? Or did you
I
have a
didn't, but my bank was interested in it. The bank on Cape Cod, every lot has already been subdivided. Not every lot is built on, But if you go to Zillow and you look at Cape Cod, there's like a dozen lots for sale across the entire 90 miles of Cape Cod from, you know, Sandwich all the way out to Provincetown. That means the banks can't sell mortgages because nobody's building. They're buying, and not many houses are exchanging. So suddenly, all the banks on Cape Cod in the last 3 years have gotten very interested in how to write new mortgages. So they're, what my point is, they're very supportive of the concept of having accessory dwelling units. So there's no problem in seeking financing for these, and they all understand it, and they're all excited about it.
And they were honestly all of the three big banks down here were the ones that had ADU products to start and have since revised them to better meet people's needs and construction costs. So it's been they've been really great. Like the Cooperative Bank of Cape Cod, Siemens
Mhm.
Bank, Cape Cod 5 all have great ADU loan products. And I now see other banks and part of the state like catching up and getting with the program.
Yep.
Um, so there's really a lot of options out there now, and it's not just one product. This is the ADU loan. They're now
Mhm.
doing different versions of it, which is neat. So I know you
It's,
didn't have to do that, but I appreciate you talking to
well,
that.
what I did is very simply, I just cashed out things like stocks and whatnot that were part of my retirement plan and put it into this. I found this, I just felt that this would be a more stable investment. It's proved out to be that way because stocks have been volatile 5 years ago and now they're volatile again, incredibly so.
Yeah.
And I
So
just can't afford that at my age.
yeah.
Slow and steady.
I think you too, Jerry, like you mentioned earlier, like I don't want to manage the electrician and the plumber
Oh
and et
boy.
cetera of a giant construction project, but you're also comfortable being a landlord and fixing things and managing the keys and deposits and all that. So it fit in what your goals were.
Well, don't forget the thing is brand new, so there haven't been any repairs that are needed. You know, you get a good 5 years before the first thing goes wrong. But this thing was well built. I mean, uh, I was watching every step of the way, the guts of it and everything going together, and I have no complaints about that. Um, it's what can I say? You know, it's
Well,
I
well,
think,
there is a question, Jerry. What was your biggest surprise during the process, and why did you choose backyard ADUs?
well, the you got to admit the videos are pretty cool with Chris and all, and they did stand out and they attracted my attention. I was suspicious at first. But they knew what they were doing. Again, they were working in markets that I was familiar with, like Amherst, Northampton, uh, and they were specialized. And they were interested in little projects where everybody else I talked to was interested in big projects. You know, a few years ago, there weren't a lot of people building ADUs specifically. That was like an offshoot of usually prefab company would be doing this, but they didn't have, you know, designers locally setting up camp. And I think backyard ADUs had targeted Cape Cod as their next expansion area, especially as I guess you and Chris monitor very carefully the changes in the zoning laws, which are happening crazy. I mean, this wasn't even doable 4 years ago. Um,
That's exactly it is. And we started the call talking about how Barnstable had rules that allowed this. Um,
Suddenly, out of
yeah,
nowhere.
yeah. And then, like I said, 2021, we came and did the feasibility in 2022. And then we were under construction, and I think we wrapped up in October of 2023. Someone asked when was it built, so we did all our homework in the fall of 22, and then I think we built like summer into the fall of 23.
It all just followed the changes in the rules. Um, I would certainly recommend the timing of building one of these has got to coincide with your town and locality's recognition of the crisis in housing in America, which shortly thereafter I think they start recognizing the benefit of ADUs. I know that this was, I traveled to Maine on occasion, and Portland was an innovator in this because there just was no housing. And how many ADUs do they allow on a, I don't even think it's size dependent for a lot. you can build almost as many as you want. And backyard ADUs is from the main area, so they had done this multiple times before. When they I don't know if it was you, the folks, I can't recall, the folks who showed up to do, what do you call it when you do the feasibility study?
Yes, I was looking through photos. It was Kevin and Chris came and did
They
it.
they knew what they were talking about. They were also pleasant and fun to deal with, which is kind of cool. But the fact that they had experience in building tiny houses and that's just what they wanted to do um, was novel to me at that time. I'm sure there are competitors out there now, but they wouldn't have they won't have the experience.
It speaks to a lot of different things of not only like the aging core of builders out there, but you brought it up earlier, is like smaller fish here, smaller projects. Builder, there's a inverted incentive here where a builder who builds a handful of houses a year is going to try to do the bigger, more expensive projects because
They
they're
also
finding
don't have the knowledge.
to do it.
Even the
Yeah.
building inspector came out specially to watch you install the foundation here. Uh, I think you have pictures of that
Yeah.
foam
Let's go find the foundation.
encapsulated
Yeah.
thing.
See here. Yeah, that's a good one.
There are no forms. That doesn't have a full basement. And that was installed, I think, in a couple of days and didn't
One day
require,
we formed in a day, we poured it in a day.
but you guys did it. You didn't
Yep,
have, I'm
yep.
used to, a backhoe, spending a couple of days there, a week later, this being what are called forms, big, huge plywood forms
Mhm.
that are dropped off and, shoved into the ground. And then uh, nobody knows how to do this. This was an innovative thing. It's ideal for a small house. Those extensions I learned are to prevent frost from getting near the base of
Mhm.
the slab of the foundation. And again, this was novel engineering. Even the inspector hadn't seen it before for Barnstable.
Yeah, yeah. The technical term is a shallow frost protected foundation. And then it's used a lot more in colder climates where
Yep.
you can't dig as deep. So this does allow us to basically dig in a day, form in a day, pour in a day. And then what we're seeing is very well insulated. It's an R22 block. So we
You're
end up,
talking about the foundation, not the house.
yeah, exactly.
So
So
but this is innovation, and nobody was presenting this to me when they were talking to me. I talked to other outfits, of course. Um, you were determined to use the water from the main house once you saw in.
that's what Barnstable told us we had to do. Um,
Well, it also saved me the cost of a well, um, an additional well. So I'm on town water. It just made sense. But
yeah.
nobody brought that up when I was talking to other, um, what do you call them, vendors,
Mhm.
contractors. And there weren't any other ADU dealers back then. So this
There's a
was, so that's why I went with backyard ADUs. I knew what they were talking about. There wasn't any competition back then.
there's a question out there about basically if this ADU was a freestanding house, where would the utilities go? And this actually photo is great. So this
Yep.
black pipe in the middle is our water pipe coming up into our crawl space. This white pipe sticking up here is our sewage pipe out into the septic. And whether it's an ADU or a freestanding house, if we're doing this crawl space foundation, our utilities will be in that, they call it the conditioned envelope. It'll be in our insulated foundation block. So there's no worries or concerns about, temperatures or freezing. And then it's all accessible in that crawl space. There's also a
Hmm.
question about a garage. If you could do a garage, the answer is yes. I know that, Jerry, that wasn't on your radar to do, didn't fit your goals or your needs. So,
Just seemed like an unnecessary expense. And I have a two-car garage on the main house.
mhm.
Uh, and also, it would have not fit with the setbacks. I was more interested in pushing this away from the main house as much as possible. And
Yeah.
having the garage there would have
Sure.
brought it probably
Mhm.
15 feet closer to the main house. We could have done it. But the beauty of this thing is really out of sight, out of mind. Um, it's unobtrusive. It's got its own entrance. I don't even know that that the tenants are in there. So the privacy factor was important, and we achieved that.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if we have a good photo of that driveway, because it was not only like design on the inside, that high window in the bedroom, so
Yeah,
it feels bigger and private, but the driveway here too. Let's see if we have any.
I don't know if you have any pictures of the main house.
Yeah, here's a photo where
You
this
can,
is after it was done, before sort of things grew in, but this is where the street, driveways here off of a separate thing. Your house is over there, your garage, you face the street on the other
Mhm,
side.
that's
And
right.
its own sort of entrance tucked in here, and then that private space in the back.
We actually had enough room if the zoning allowed. We could have built two of these.
There would have been a lot of room. We could have shared some of the infrastructure, which would be great. But like you said earlier, hopefully in the future, if you know the hopefully the housing crisis doesn't get worse, but hopefully we can pilot some solutions that make it easier to do that. All right, Jerry, I got one last question for you. Um, in hindsight's always 2020. What would you have done differently?
Well, you warned me that that question was coming, and the only thing I could think of was I felt like I would have made the bedroom a little bit bigger. But seeing the pictures, uh, it
And
seems
go for
adequate.
it.
I'm- I have a queen size bed. I've never had a king size bed before. It is a little tight sleeping with a cat. Um, but in the pictures, it seems big enough. So that was pretty much the only real thing. Um, I don't know. I'm pretty satisfied with the whole thing, with the process. Again, my most important goal was really to meet the budget. That was critical because this was an investment, and that could have busted the bank right there and altered my goals for retirement. So that was a huge thing. And we're not just talking about the house, we're talking about the driveway, the landscaping, the septic system, the installation of the electric. Um, all of that combined fell within the budget constraints and even came in a few $1,000s under. Uh, and we were able to take care of rebates. I don't think you mentioned that, but because the thing is so airtight, we actually hired a company to come in to do some final touch-ups to make it meet the criteria, which is very stringent. I think it was like $10,000 came back to me on that as a rebate for energy efficiency. So I really have no complaints about the thing, and there's nothing I would do differently, really. I'm pretty pleased
Well,
with the thing, and I'm a pretty picky guy normally. I'm not that easily satisfied, but it just came together. When there were, here's an important thing: when there were problems, we solved them, and it wasn't problem free. Um, the problems weren't with the ADU, but I remember we had trouble connecting the water to the house. We had planned to just drill a hole through the foundation, but turns out where the foundation was crawl space and it wasn't deep enough. So we had to go under the house and drill a hole through the floor, the slab of the house to bring the water up. It's a real hassle. Um, but we figured it out, probably took an hour, a couple of phone calls to you guys working with the plumber and also the backhoe people had to go deeper, so it wasn't a simple problem, but it was solved within a day. So I guess easy communication. I was able to reach anyone I needed to. I just did email in the morning. I never had to phone anyone because they responded. That was pretty cool. So
yeah, it's a challenging industry, and communication is a hard part of the job. So
I made friends with the carpenters. They're just nice people. Bring them a sandwich. They'll do anything you want.
it's the little things. Well,
No, it
Jerry,
was a very
thank
pleasant experience overall. And I'm not paid to say that, I must say. So what can I tell you?
Yeah. Well, Jerry, thank you so much. I know
My pleasure.
it's been a while since you built, and then I wanted to pull you in tonight because it's like, hey, a couple years later,
Yep, when it's
for the
empty,
most
anyone's welcome to come take a look, and I'll talk their ear off about the experience, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It was exciting, and it was a big deal, and it wasn't stress-free, mostly because of my worry over the budget. But that turned out to be not an issue,
Yeah.
which is huge. Uh,
Well,
got out.
thank you for your time. I'm glad we were able to show it off, and thank you everybody for joining tonight. We will have the recording of this, so if you weren't able to stay for the whole thing, that will be available. It should go out to you in an email. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us at info@backyardadus.com. And that's sort of our central hub to help answer your questions and point you in the right direction. So thank you, Jerry. Good to see you.
My pleasure. Nice to see you.
Take care.